Hey everybody, it's Ann Kaplan from Ann Kaplan Childbirth Services and Mom Me, and still in Mexico. You would not believe the calisthenics we just had to do to get a place that was out of the wind and a strong Wi-Fi signal, but I think we made it.
It was such a haze.
We'll find out when this thing cuts out halfway through our broadcast. But we're still sticking on the theme of relationships for this week. So important if you're in a partnership and you have kids. You know, the strength and balance in your relationship is something that transcends just the two of you, and it's so important for your kids. So today what we're going to talk about is dark times, like which every relationship has, and what do you do about them? How do you weather that storm? And you know, Mike and I definitely have been married for 13. I think we're married 13 years now. And how has that been for us? We've definitely had some really dark times when I thought maybe I made a huge mistake, or what would my life have been like if I had chosen a different path and been on my own or not had children. And you know, how does that affect our relationship? It's not good. It's not pretty. I will tell you that much. How about you, honey? Have you had some dark times in our relationship?
Yeah, I mean, we hit upon it a little bit yesterday, where if I feel that there's a lot of distance between Ann and me, if that lasts for a prolonged period of time, then we start getting disconnected, and then that is, you know, that starts a pretty bad domino effect for us, in my opinion.
So for me, I thought a lot about this topic before we went live, and you know, I thought at first we should have some tips of like what to do when you're feeling like you're in a dark time, or if your relationship is in a rut or something like that. And I thought about that, and then I decided, no, that's not the key, because you know, we talked yesterday, what do you do to find time for yourself? That's all of those tips are the same for what do you do when you're in dark times. Therapy, journaling, spending time together, carving out time for each other. That's all helpful in those moments, so definitely important. But what I want to talk about today is just a little bit about like, how do you get your head on straight when you're in those dark times in your relationship so that you can make it through. And you know, I think for me, what I say a lot to parents when I'm working with them is focus on the who and the why, not the how and the what. So what does that mean? That means, who do you want to be? Have a very clear vision about who you want to be and what you want your life to be like. It's okay if you don't know exactly how you're going to get there. It's okay if you don't know exactly what choices to make or what is the right path. It matters much more who you want to be as an individual and who do you want to be as a couple. Have that clear. Talk about it. Have a vision for your relationship, and that is your compass to steer your ship when the seas get rough, to use a metaphor. And the why, like, what are your values? What's important to you? What are the most important feelings that you want to have in your relationship, and the way you want to feel when you're with your partner? And if you have those things in clear focus, the how and the what will work themselves out. So you're in a dark time, you feel like, I don't know which way to go, I don't know what the right choice is, like, is this even the right partner for me? Did I make a mistake? Are we going to get through this? It's so hard to know. But if you can bring it back to the concept of who are we? Who are we as a couple? Who are we as individuals? And how do we want to feel? Why? What is our why? What is our purpose? What are our values? The answers to all those other questions about weathering the storm will come to you. And I know that that's very kind of esoteric, but I think that is actually a super big key. And for me and Mike, you know, for me, sometimes I didn't know, like, if we were going to make it, or if I had made a mistake, or if I would have been happier choosing somebody else, or all of those things that we question sometimes. Happens to all of us. But underlying always was trust. Not necessarily like, I trust my partner, although I definitely do trust you.
Thank you.
But trust that we made a commitment to each other, and that is the bottom line. Like, trust that it will get better. Trust that this too shall pass. Even if you don't see how, if you believe that it will, you're going to have a lot more tenacity to just be patient and weather the storm.
And that trust is birthed out of the vision that you have for your relationship, for what you want out of your life. And as Ann stated earlier, it can be, your vision for your relationship and who you are and who your spouse is can really dictate, what happens during those dark times, what things we do together and apart to try to rectify, the darkness.
Right. Yeah, so when you're bringing that focus to whatever actual activities you're doing to heal your relationship, whether it's therapy, whether it's journaling, whether it's taking some time apart, whether it's, whatever, just trying something new, always, always, always you keep in your mind that you've made a commitment to each other, you trust that you made the right choice, you trust that it is going to work out, and you keep in clear sight your why and your who. And that brings me to the last thing, which I think is the most important, honestly, is figure out whose shit is whose. When you're in a fight or a conflict, or you're feeling triggered or frustrated with each other, 90% of what's going on in a relationship is each of you vomiting your baggage onto each other. So Mike and I can have a conflict, like, I'm trying to think of a good example of, okay, how about this? Our kid's getting bullied in school, and Mike and I have very different views about how to handle bullying in school, and we've fought about that before pretty seriously, of like, you can't be intervening on our kid's behalf. That's not how it has to be, and you can't just let our kid flounder like that. How can you just be so callous, blah blah blah? And we start fighting with each other and fighting and fighting and fighting. We take a step back, and I need to realize that Mike had a really traumatic experience as a child being bullied in school. So when we're fighting about stuff, he's bringing all of this stuff to the table that's complicating the whole conversation. When I'm able to take a step back and say, like, okay, what he's saying right now about me, and if I'm callous or I'm a horrible mother or whatever, not that he's ever actually said I'm a horrible mother, but like you're saying, oh, you're being insensitive or whatever, that's not about me at all. That's him. And being able to say, what about this conversation is me and I need to own it, and what about this conflict is you and I need to just let you keep that for yourself and not take it on. And when you're able to do that, you can be so much more compassionate to your partner, because you're not absorbing all of the stuff that's coming off of them as your problem and your job and something that's wrong with you. I think an even better example is, a couple of years ago, Mike started his own practice, and he was really, really stressed out. And he was, we could both agree, really a nightmare to live with. He was angry all the time. He was short-tempered. He would come home and just be basically a giant dick all the time. And, I could feel myself getting into this feeling of just like, I don't want to be married to you. I don't want to live in this life with an asshole. And, if this is how you're going to be, you need to go fuck off, because this isn't the life that I chose for myself, and it's not going to go down this way. And that was a really dark time for us, honestly. And eventually we were both able to recognize, like, okay, all the ways that Mike's behaving when he comes home from work has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with the kids. It's all about Mike being triggered by this experience that he's having, feeling stressed out and all of that stuff. Once I was able to recognize, like, I'm just going to let Mike own this stuff and it's not my cross to bear, now I can show up for him as a compassionate partner and say, you know what, honey, I know it's really hard for you at work. It's not okay the way that you're behaving right now, but I'm not upset about it. I'm just pointing out to you that this is a boundary I'm setting, instead of letting it be this thing that's escalating. So literally in the conversation, ask yourself, how much of this shit is mine and how much of this shit is theirs? And I'm just not even going to take on that stuff that's not my shit. And at the same time, you do need to take on the shit that is yours and own it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really hard. The concept that Ann is describing, I don't want anybody to think that's an easy thing to cope with.
We're not like Bodhisattvas around each other when we're fighting. Like, oh, honey, I sense your, pain, and I want to heal your wounds with my compassion. It is definitely not like that.
but at the same time, we've set some good ground rules for one another.
No name calling.
We don't know not very often do we yell at one another. There's absolutely no name calling. We don't kitchen sink that often. So there are some boundaries that we've made when we're getting into a kind of a heated discussion about something, and I think one of the hardest things that Ann is describing is actually being honest with yourself. All too often people, or at least with us when we're early in our marriage, we would start fighting about something and then completely go into some type of tangent that had nothing to do with the fight itself, but we just weren't coming to the conversation being honest with ourselves, and therefore not being honest with each other. So that's really hard to do. I mean, it's terribly hard to do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's something that you work at all the time. So that's a common theme from yesterday. It's like, you have to do it. You have to try. You have to work. You have to work so hard. And really, really take a good, strong look at yourself every step of the way. And sometimes you realize, like, I really did make a mistake. This really isn't a good relationship. And, and that's, something that happens, plenty of times. People are parenting by themselves or choosing to parent in two different homes and all of that stuff, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
I also think,
but this really is just more about if you are dedicated to trying to make it work, how do you do that?
I also think it's really important to make it a safe environment, a safe place to share. I mean, we're advising being introspective about ourselves, but then once you're introspective about yourself and you're ready to put yourself out there, that can be a pretty scary thing to do when you're putting your raw feelings out there.
Right.
Making a safe environment is important.
You need to receive that stuff in the same way that you would want your stuff to be received. So I hope that's helpful to you guys. We're going to keep trying to broadcast all week, and tomorrow we are talking about sex. So get ready, and don't let your kids listen if you care, because we're going to lay it all out on the line. We're going to talk about sex for real. So stay tuned, guys, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.